Perfect, Andrea said coldly. Now you're officially homeless. This house belongs to me. Her words still echoed through the room as I lifted my eyes from the stack of papers I had just signed. The smile on her lips was cruel and triumphant, as if she had just claimed a prize she had always believed was hers. But I didn't tremble. I didn't cry. I simply said, in the calm voice of someone who had seen this coming long ago, "Check the last page, sweetheart." When I saw her smile falter, I knew the 6 months of silent observation, pretending not to notice her scheme, letting her believe she was smarter than me, had all been worth it. Because while she was busy plotting to steal this house, I had been preparing something far bigger. The silence between us stretched thin, like a crack widening slowly. I saw her fingers tremble as she turned each page, looking for the one I had just mentioned. Her breathing quickened, and for the first time in months, it was she, not I, who showed fear. I sat still in my favorite oak armchair, the one my late husband had bought me 30 years ago. I quietly watched the power slip from her hands back into mine. The woman sitting there watching her daughter realize she had just lost her own game was someone who had learned over 71 years that patience is the sharpest weapon a woman can wield. My name is Ruth Parker. 6 months ago, I was still the kind of woman who always said yes. Yes to my husband when he wanted me to quit my job and stay home with the family. Yes to my children whenever they needed tuition money. Yes to Andrea when she asked for help after her divorce. Yes, yes, and yes, until the day that very word became my worst enemy. But to understand how, I need to start from the beginning, because none of this began with the papers on my kitchen table today. It began 6 months earlier, when Andrea showed up at my door with tear-filled eyes and a story too good to be true. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October. The late autumn sun still carried traces of summer warmth, but the air already hinted at winter. I had just finished my online yoga class, a routine I'd kept since the pandemic, when I heard the door swing open in a rush. Andrea stepped in without knocking, as she often did since her divorce, after she'd moved to an apartment across town with her 2 kids. Her hair was a tangled mess, not the deliberate kind you see in magazines, but the real kind that comes after hours of crying and pulling at it. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale and tired. The sharp click of her heels echoed across the wooden floor, filling the empty silence that had replaced the laughter of children, the sound of television, and the chatter of family dinners. Since my husband passed 3 years ago, that lively noise had faded from the house. Andrea's footsteps used to bring me joy, but that day, their hurried rhythm filled me with unease. "Mom," she sighed, collapsing onto the couch. "I need to talk to you." "Seriously?" I closed my laptop, sat across from her, and braced myself for one of her familiar crises. Since her breakup with Robert, those talks had become routine, like saying a nightly prayer. She always needed something: rent money, school fees for the kids, car repairs, and I always helped, because that's what mothers do. Because when everyone else walks away, we're the ones holding the walls together, keeping everyone safe, keeping the family from falling apart. "What is it, honey?" I asked, already sensing this would somehow involve money. "Mom, I'm really worried about you." Her words caught me off guard. It had been a long time since any conversation between us was about me. The genuine concern in her voice softened me immediately. "Yesterday I talked to Patricia. You remember her, my friend from high school? She works at a bank now." I nodded, faintly recalling the thin, cheerful girl who used to do homework with Andrea at our kitchen table. She said there are a lot of scammers targeting older people now. They pretend to be from the government or banks, tricking them out of their money, even taking their homes. I couldn't sleep last night thinking it could happen to you." The way she said it with teary eyes and a trembling voice touched something deep in me. After all these years, my daughter was finally worried about her mother. The warmth of that thought wrapped around me like a blanket. "Don't worry, Andrea," I said, holding her hand. "I'm careful. I don't open the door to strangers or give out my personal information." "But Mom, it's not that simple," she insisted, her tone urgent, like the little girl who used to beg me for toys she saw on TV. "Patricia said some scammers are really sophisticated. They can use your personal data to get loans or even seize your property." Her words sent a chill through me. This house had been my home for 45 years, the place where I raised my children, cared for my husband through his illness, where every wall held a piece of my life. The thought of losing it terrified me more than death itself. "So what should I do?" I asked. Her eyes lit up, the same gleam she used to have whenever she wanted to convince me of something as a child. "Patricia said there's a way to protect your assets. You can temporarily transfer them to a trusted relative just to make sure everything's safe. When the danger passes, they'll transfer it back." A strange feeling crept up in me, not exactly suspicion, more like a faint unease, as if someone was watching from the shadows, but I brushed it aside. She was my daughter, after all. "I'm not sure, Andrea. That sounds complicated. What if they don't give it back?" She let out a practiced laugh, one that sounded like she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. "Mom, what are you talking about? I'm your daughter. How could I ever? I'd do that to you. It's just temporary." That afternoon, after Andrea left, I sat in the living room with a cup of chamomile tea and turned on the evening news. But this time, none of it registered. Her words kept echoing in my mind. My phone buzzed a text from my granddaughter, Sophia. "Grandma, can you send me $50? Mom says she doesn't get paid until Friday, but I need it for a school project." There were a few sad faces and heart emojis. I sent the money immediately, as I always did. But as I typed, "Love you," I froze. Andrea said she was worried about my financial safety, afraid someone might scam me, yet she and her kids asked me for money every week. Wasn't that a contradiction? In the weeks that followed, Andrea kept bringing up the subject over and over, her tone always the same, urgent, worried, protective. She brought me newspaper articles about senior fraud cases, sent me links about identity theft, called to tell me stories about her friends being scammed. "Look, Mom," she said one day, holding out her phone. "Here's an article about a 75-year-old woman who lost her home after signing some papers she didn't understand. Each story was worse than the last. Each headline made me feel smaller, more vulnerable, more unsafe. Slowly, almost without realizing it, I began to believe that danger really was closing in, that my home, my security, my future could all be snatched away by invisible forces beyond my control. And there was Andrea, my own daughter, ready with a solution. But something about it didn't sit right. It was the way she looked at me when she talked about protecting my assets, like she knew something I didn't. Like she was performing in a play, and I was the only one without a script. One morning, while making breakfast, I got a call from my younger sister, Hope, who lives in Texas. Hope is 5 years younger, but she's always been the practical one. "Ruth, how are you?" "Doing?" "It's been too long." Her cheerful tone instantly lightened my mood. "I'm okay," I said, "just worrying about things I probably shouldn't." Before I knew it, I'd told her everything, Andrea's warnings, the supposed scams, and her proposal to protect my property. There was a pause on the line before Hope said, Doesn't that seem strange to you? Right when Andrea's struggling financially, she suddenly shows up worried about your financial safety. Her words hit me like a splash of cold water. What do you mean? I asked. Ruth, you've always been careful with money. You've never fallen for scams. So why now? And why does her solution involve putting everything in her name? That night I couldn't sleep. Hope's words kept circling in my mind, tangled with Andrea's tears, her stories, her insistence that I was in danger. For the first time in weeks, I tried to look at it as if it were someone else's problem. If a neighbor told me her daughter, who was having money trouble, suddenly became obsessed with protecting her mother's finances and suggested transferring everything into her own name, what advice would I give? The answer came instantly, sharp and painful. I'd tell her to be careful. It sounded like manipulation. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. Instead of waiting for Andrea to call or drop by, I went to see her myself. I showed up at her apartment unannounced, carrying a box of butter cookies from the bakery she used to love as a child. "Mom, what a surprise," she said when she opened the door, but the tightness in her face told me it wasn't a pleasant one. The apartment was messier than usual, boxes stacked in corners, papers spread across the kitchen counter bills. By the look of them. "How are the kids?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Sophia needs new glasses. Michael wants to join the school baseball team," she said, her voice trailing off as her eyes flicked toward the pile of papers. "What else, sweetheart?" I pressed gently. "Everything costs money, Mom. Glasses, sports fees, rent keeps going up." For the first time in weeks, I saw my daughter clearly not as the anxious woman worried about my safety, but as a struggling single mother trying to keep her head above water in a world that kept getting more expensive. "Andrea," I said softly, taking her hand, "if you need help, just ask. You don't need to invent stories about scams to get money." Her face changed instantly. The mask of concern vanished, replaced by panic. "I didn't make anything up, Mom. I really was worried about you. Sweetheart, I've been alive 71 years. I'm not naive. I can tell when someone's lying, even when it's my own child." The air between us turned heavy. I could hear the ticking of the clock, the TV from next door, the kids' muffled voices from their room. "Fine," she said finally, her voice hardening. "I need money, a lot of it, not just for everyday stuff." "For what then?" I asked quietly. "I'm in debt, Mom. When I divorced Robert, he took everything. I had to borrow money to move with the kids. Now interest rates are up, and I can't keep up." At last, the truth. After weeks of talk about scams and concern for me, this was what it was really about. "How much do you need?" I asked. "Mom, it's not just about now. I'll need more in the future. The kids will grow up, they'll want to go to college, and I can't give them what they need. I need your help, but you won't live forever." Those words cut deeper than I expected. "What happens when you're gone, Mom? What happens to us?" "Andrea, when I'm gone, everything I have will go to you and your brother. It's written clearly in my will." "But Mom, that's too far away. The kids need me now. I need you now." The trap was closing in. It was no longer about protecting me from scammers. It was about her needing my money and my house. Not someday. Right now. "So what exactly are you suggesting?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Transfer the house to my name," she said quickly. "I'll take out a mortgage against it to pay my debts. When you pass away, there won't be any legal complications." There it was, the real proposal at last. Not protection from scams, but using the home I'd lived in for 45 years as collateral for my daughter's debt. "I need to think about it," I said, standing up. "Mom, we don't have time. The interest keeps going up every day." That evening, I sat down in my favorite armchair and, for the first time in months, didn't turn on the television. I sat in silence, thinking about all that had happened, the lies, the half-truths, the manipulation wrapped in love. Then I decided to call Alma Monroe. Alma was the most straightforward person I'd ever known. When we worked together at the accounting office more than 20 years ago, she was the only one brave enough to tell the boss when he was wrong. When I dialed her number that night, I knew she'd tell me exactly what she thought, no sugarcoating, no soft lies. "Ruth, how are you? It's been ages since you called," she said, her voice still strong and steady. "Alma, I need your help with something, but you can't tell anyone, especially Andrea. What's going on?" I heard the TV volume drop in the background. "I think my daughter's planning something against me," I said. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. I told her everything, the visits, the stories about scams, the talk about transferring the house, and the final conversation where Andrea admitted she needed money. Alma listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a while, then asked, "What does your heart tell you about all this?" "I think she's lying, manipulating me," I said, softly, "but I also feel like a terrible mother for even thinking that. Ruth, you're a mother who's given her daughter everything her whole life. That doesn't make you bad, it makes you human. And humans make mistakes, even with the people they love most." "What should I do?" I asked. "First, do nothing. Don't sign a thing. Don't promise anything. Second, we're going to find out what's really going on with Andrea. And third, we're going to protect you." "How?" I asked. "Leave that to me," Alma replied. "I'll make some calls today. I know people at the bank where that Patricia girl supposedly works. I'll check if they ever actually told clients to transfer their assets to their children for protection." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't alone with my fear. Alma was with me. The next morning, she called back. "Ruth, I spoke with 3 people at the bank. Not one of them has ever heard of any policy suggesting people should transfer their property to their kids to protect against scams. In fact, they said that's exactly the opposite of what they recommend." "What are you saying?" I asked, though I already knew. "I'm saying the story Andrea told you about Patricia from the bank was made up. No bank would ever give that kind of advice." It felt like a slap to the face. It's one thing to suspect your child is lying, it's another to have proof. "But that's not all," Alma continued. "I checked a few other things too. Did you know Andrea applied for a loan 2 months ago and was denied?" I shook my head, speechless. "They required collateral," Alma said, "and she had nothing to offer specifically, no house." Suddenly, everything fell into place. Andrea hadn't invented those scam stories just to scare me. She had crafted an entire narrative to lead me exactly where she wanted me, to make me hand her the deed to my house, so she could use it as collateral for her loan. "Alma, what am I supposed to do? She's still my daughter. I can't just let her fall apart. No one's asking you to abandon her," Alma said gently but firmly. "But you can't let her drag you down with her either. Ruth, if you transfer your house to Andrea and she takes out a mortgage, do you know what happens if she can't make the payments?" I didn't. "The bank takes your house, Ruth. Your house, the one you've lived in for 45 years. Her words chilled me to the bone. I had never thought that far ahead. In my mind, helping Andrea meant she'd fix her problems and give the house back. But Alma was right. If she defaulted, the bank would seize everything. "So what do you think I should do?" I asked. "I think," Alma said, "we should play her game, but by our rules." In the days that followed, Andrea became more insistent. Every morning she called, asking if I'd made up my mind. She sent more articles about scams, more text messages full of urgency. She even brought the kids over, and I could tell she'd coached them. "Grandma," little Sophia asked, her eyes wide with worry. "Mom said bad people want to take your house. Is that true?" I hugged her tightly and smiled. "Don't worry, sweetheart, Grandma's fine." But inside, my heart ached. Andrea had pulled even the children into her web. That Friday afternoon, Andrea showed up at my house holding a thick folder. "Mom, I brought the papers. Patricia helped me prepare everything. You just need to sign here and here." She pointed at the yellow tabs marking the pages. "Everything's ready?" I asked, pretending to sound surprised. "Yes, Mom. The sooner you sign, the sooner you'll be protected." I picked up the folder and flipped through it carefully. They were, indeed, transfer documents. The house my husband and I had bought 45 years ago, the place where I raised my children and cared for him through his illness, was about to belong to my daughter. "Andrea," I said slowly, "these papers don't say anything about protecting me from scams. They clearly state that I'm gifting you the house." "Well, technically yes," she replied quickly, "but it's just to keep you safe. And like I said, if I ever need a loan, I can use the house as collateral." I watched her face change slightly. "So you could borrow money without asking me?" "Well, legally, yes," she said with a nervous laugh, "but I'd never actually do that." "But if the house is in your name," I said evenly, "it belongs to you, legally." "Mom, why are you asking so many questions? Don't you trust me?" Her question hit me like a knife. Did I trust my own daughter? The painful, undeniable answer was no. Not this time. Not about this. "I need a few more days to think," I said. "Mom, we don't have time. Every day that passes, you're at more risk." "Andrea," I said, steadying my voice, "I've made it 71 years without being scammed. I think I can manage a few more days." That night, I ate dinner alone, as I had since my husband passed, and made my decision. If Andrea wanted to play, I would play, but I would win. I called Alma. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked. "Absolutely," I said. "Tomorrow we're meeting with my lawyer." The next morning, Alma drove me to the office of attorney James Whitaker, the man who had handled my husband's will and all our real estate documents. He was an older gentleman, calm, wise, trustworthy. I told him everything. Andrea's lies, the pressure to sign, the growing doubt inside me. "After listening, Mr. Whitaker said, "What your daughter is doing has a name under the law, elder financial abuse. It's a crime, even if she's your child." "But she's my daughter," I whispered. "I understand. That makes it harder, but it doesn't make it legal. Still, I don't think you want to press charges. So, what do you want to do?" "I want to protect myself, and I want her to learn that her mother isn't some frail old woman who can be fooled." Mr. Whitaker smiled. "I think I can help with that." Over the next 2 hours, he and Alma crafted a plan simple, elegant, and sharp. We'd prepare a set of documents that looked exactly like what Andrea wanted, but would protect me completely. "The key," he said, "is in the fine print. She won't read it carefully. When people think they're about to get what they want, they tend to miss the small details." That Monday morning, I called Andrea. "Sweetheart, I think you're right," I said. "I want to protect my property. Come by this afternoon and we'll sign." "Really, Mom? That's amazing. I'll come right away." "No, not right away. This afternoon. I want to review everything once more." That afternoon, Andrea arrived with her folder, but I already had the documents Mr. Whitaker prepared laid neatly on the kitchen table. "Andrea," I said, "I reviewed the papers you brought. But my friend Alma showed me another version. She said it's safer. A lawyer helped me prepare it. Andrea flipped through the first few pages, just as we expected. She was too eager to read carefully. "It's fine, Mom. Where do I sign?" And just like that, my daughter walked straight into her own trap. "Here, right?" she said, pen already in hand, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. "That's right, sweetheart," I said, pointing to the line Mr. Whitaker had marked. I signed with the calmness of someone who had signed hundreds of birthday cards for her grandchildren, but this time, my signature marked the start of a quiet counterattack. Andrea quickly folded the papers and stuffed them into her bag, as if afraid I might change my mind. "Thank you, Mom. You don't know how relieved I am. You're safe now." "It's nothing, dear," I said softly. "That's what family's for." After she left, I sat back in my chair and waited. I knew the call would come soon. Mr. Whitaker had told me that banks process loan applications quickly once documents are submitted, and just as he predicted, on Wednesday morning while I was watering my garden, the phone rang. It was Andrea. One word from her tone told me she'd discovered the truth. "Mom, you have to come with me to the bank right now. There's a problem with the papers." "What kind of problem?" I asked. "They said there are some confusing clauses. You need to come confirm them." "What clauses?" "I don't know, just legal stuff." "Please, Mom, come with me." That afternoon we went to the bank together. Patricia, the supposed friend from high school, turned out to be a young employee in her mid-30s. "Mrs. Parker," she said politely after reviewing the documents, "according to these papers, even though your daughter is listed as the legal owner, you retain full rights of use and decision. She cannot sell, mortgage, or use the property as collateral without your written consent." I watched the color drain from Andrea's face. "That can't be," she stammered. "The documents say the house is mine." "That's true," Patricia replied calmly, "but with a series of restrictive clauses, the property remains effectively under your mother's control. You hold the title in name only, but you have no real ownership rights." Andrea swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "So, what does that mean?" Patricia smiled faintly. "It means you can't use the house to get a loan." The room fell silent. I could see Andrea struggling to process her defeat. Her entire plan had just collapsed. When we stepped out into the parking lot, she turned to me, her voice breaking. "Mom," I looked at her, realizing something I should have known all along, that sometimes, to protect what's yours, you have to protect yourself even from your own family. "But Mom, I'm your daughter. I'd never hurt you," Andrea said, her voice shaking. "Andrea," I said quietly, "these past few weeks, you lied to me about Patricia at the bank. You made up stories about scammers. You played on my fears and tried to make me sign papers that could have cost me my home if you defaulted on your debts. Do you really think that isn't hurting me?" We walked to the car in silence. I could see her caught between anger and despair. She had truly believed she could outsmart me. "Mom, I really needed the money. Not out of malice, I just didn't know what else to do." "I understand," I said softly. "If you had told me the truth from the start, I would have helped you. But not like this. Not through lies. So what do I do now?" she whispered. "The debt is still there. The interest is rising." For the first time in weeks, I saw my real daughter again, not the schemer, but a frightened single mother trying to stay afloat. "Come home with me," I said gently. "We'll sit down like two adults. You'll tell me everything honestly, and we'll figure out how I can help." That afternoon, Andrea and I sat at the kitchen table, each with a cup of coffee. At last, she told me the truth. Her debt was much larger than she had admitted. She had been using credit cards to keep up the lifestyle she'd had when she was married, convinced that sooner or later she'd land a better job. But that job never came, and the debt kept growing. "I have to pay $12,000 this month, or they'll freeze my accounts," she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. "How much do you owe in total?" $80,000. It was a big number, but not impossible. I had savings, my pension, and a few investments my late husband had made years ago. "I'll help you," I said, "but under one condition." "What condition?" she asked. "First, no. More lies. If you need help, ask for it, don't invent stories. Second, we'll make a repayment plan. I'm not handing over all the money at once for you to spend freely. And third, you'll attend a financial counseling program to learn how to manage money properly." Andrea nodded, but I could see something still hidden behind her eyes. "What else?" I asked. She looked up, her eyes red. "It's not just about money, Mom. I feel like a failure. I'm 35 and can't even support my kids. Now I'm begging my 71-year-old mother for help." I took her hand. "Asking for help doesn't make you a failure. Lying and manipulating to get it does." That evening, after Andrea left, I called Alma and told her everything. "Do you think she's learned her lesson?" Alma asked. "I'm not sure," I replied. "But I've learned something, that I'm smarter than I thought, and I don't have to let anyone, not even my own daughter, make me feel like a helpless old woman." But that sense of relief didn't last long. 3 days later, Andrea came back, and she wasn't the same woman who had cried at my kitchen table. Her voice was cold, her eyes distant. "Mom, I've been thinking," she said flatly. "You've been cruel to me." "Cruel?" I raised an eyebrow. "Yes, I'm your daughter. When I need help, you should give it without conditions, without lawyers, without humiliating me at the bank." I understood right then this wasn't over. "Mom, you need to understand something," she continued, pacing around the living room as if she owned the place. "I'm not some stranger. I'm your daughter. Everything you have will be mine eventually." Those words sent a chill through me. For the first time in my life, I heard my daughter speak of my death as a financial transaction. "Andrea, sit down. We need to talk calmly. No, Mom, you had your turn playing by your rules. Now it's my turn." She crossed her arms, her eyes flashing the same defiance she'd had as a teenager. "You think I didn't notice? You let me do all the work, prepare all the papers, just so you could humiliate me in front of the bank. I let you show me who you really are," I said quietly. "And who do you think I am, Mom? A bad daughter? A con artist? I think you're a desperate woman who chose the wrong path. I'm desperate because my mother has money and clings to it while her own grandchildren go without what they need. Andrea, I told you I'd help responsibly, with a plan." "A plan? Conditions? You treat me like a child. I have a right to this house. Sooner or later, it'll be mine and the kids." I took a deep breath and looked her straight in the eye. "This house is mine as long as I'm alive." "But you're old, Mom. What happens when you can't take care of yourself anymore? When you need care, where will that money come from?" There was bitterness in her tone that made my stomach turn. I realized her words weren't concern, they were a threat disguised as pity. "Andrea," I said firmly, "I think you should go. Right now." "What? You're kicking me out of the house I grew up in? The house that'll be mine one day?" "I'm asking you to leave because I won't tolerate the way you're speaking to me." Andrea laughed, a cold, hollow laugh. "Fine, Mom. But think about this. Who's going to be there for you when you really need someone?" When she left, I sank into my chair, shaking not from fear, but from anger. How had I raised a daughter who could talk to her mother like that? How could she look at my old age and see only an opportunity? I called Alma immediately. "Ruth, what happened? You sound awful." I told her everything, every cruel word, every veiled threat. Alma sighed. "She's lost, Ruth. Too desperate to see right from wrong, but you can't let her use the kids to guilt you." That night, I couldn't sleep. Andrea's words echoed in my mind. "You're old, Mom. Who will be there for you when you really need someone?" For the first time since my husband's death, I felt truly alone. My daughter, the one person who should have loved me unconditionally now, saw me only as an obstacle between her and my money. The next morning, I did something I had avoided for years. I called my son, Mark, who lived in Chicago. "Mom? Wow, this is a surprise. How are you?" "I'm fine, sweetheart, but I need to ask you something. Has Andrea said anything to you about money?" There was a long pause on the other end. "Mom, what's going on?" I told him everything, the lies, the manipulation, the talk about transferring the house, even the threats. "Mom," Mark said, his tone darkening. "Andrea called me 2 weeks ago. She said you were showing signs of confusion, that you were spending money irresponsibly." I froze. "What did you say?" I told her if she was really worried, she should take you to a doctor. "But Mom, are you sure your memory's okay?" "I'm fine, Mark. Completely fine. Andrea made that up because she didn't get what she wanted." "Mom, this is serious. If she's saying you can't manage your finances, she might be preparing to file for guardianship." "What does that mean?" "It means if she succeeds, she'll gain full control over everything. Your money, your house, even your medical care. You'd lose all your rights." A chill ran through me. What should I do? "First, see your doctor and get every test you need to prove you're mentally sound. Second, document everything that's happened. And finally, talk to your lawyer about updating your will. I don't want to disinherit her. It's not about that, Mom. It's about protecting you while you're alive." That afternoon, I went to see my longtime doctor, Dr. Miller. I told him everything and asked him to run a full cognitive assessment. He looked at me kindly when the tests were done. "Mrs. Parker, your memory is sharp, and your cognitive function is excellent. For your age, your mental health is remarkable. You're perfectly capable of making your own decisions. Doctor, could you give me a written certificate confirming that?" "Of course," he said. "I'll also refer you to a neurologist for a comprehensive evaluation. You should have a full medical record on file to protect yourself." In the following days, I became a woman with a mission. I visited specialists, collected medical documents, and kept a detailed journal of everything Andrea had done. Attorney Whitaker helped me organize it all. "Mrs. Parker," he said, "with this much documentation, no one can claim you're incapable of managing your affairs." But while I was building my defense, Andrea was planning her next move, and it was far more ruthless than I ever imagined. That Friday afternoon, my grandchildren, Sophia and Michael, showed up at my house in tears. "Grandma," Sophia sobbed, "Mom said you don't love us anymore because you won't help the family." "What did she say?" I asked, my chest tightening. "She said you're selfish, that you only care about keeping your money." I was speechless. Andrea had crossed the final line. She had dragged her children into this, poisoning their young minds with lies about the grandmother who adored them. I held them close. "My loves, your mom is just confused right now. I love you more than anything in this world. Nothing will ever change that." That night, alone in the quiet house, I made the hardest decision of my life. It was time to show Andrea that her mother wasn't weak. It was time to fight back. On Monday morning, I did something I never thought I would. I hired a private investigator. Following Attorney Whitaker's recommendation, I met with Robert Sanders, a specialist in financial abuse within families. "Mrs. Parker," Robert said in his office, "we're going to document everything your daughter has done. Every lie, every manipulation, every threat. We need solid evidence." "For what purpose?" "For what purpose?" I asked. "To protect you. If she takes this further, she might try to have you declared mentally unfit. We need to be ready." Over the next week, Robert investigated Andrea's situation thoroughly, her real debts, her consultations with lawyers about guardianship, her failed loan attempts. When he called me at the end of the week, his voice was grim. "Your daughter has spoken with 3 different lawyers about filing for guardianship," he said. "She told them you were showing signs of dementia and wasting money." I felt my heart sink. "But I just went through all the tests. I'm perfectly healthy." "I know, but she's building a false narrative, and there's something even worse." "What is it?" "She's contacted a property appraiser and a real estate agency to inquire about your home's market value. It looks like she's preparing to sell it." It felt like the ground fell out from under me. Andrea didn't just want to use my house as collateral, she intended to sell it. Her plan was to get legal guardianship, declare that I needed medical care, sell the house to cover expenses, and pocket the rest. She wasn't just trying to steal my home, she was planning to put me in a nursing facility to take everything. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice shaking. Robert met my eyes. "Now, Mrs. Parker, we're going to teach her a lesson she'll never forget." That afternoon, Andrea showed up at my house with a strange man. "Mom, this is Dr. Franklin," she said, feigning sweetness. "He's a memory specialist. He just needs to ask you a few questions." "I don't need another doctor," I said. "Dr. Miller already confirmed I'm perfectly fine. But lately you've been confused," she insisted. "All those things with the bank, you've been saying odd things. I think you need help." Dr. Franklin stepped forward, flashing a rehearsed smile that made my blood boil. "Mrs. Parker, I just want to make sure you're being properly cared for." I looked him straight in the eyes. "Show me your medical license and tell me who's paying for this evaluation." Andrea and the man exchanged a nervous glance. "Ma'am, this is just an informal visit," he said. "In my house," I replied. "Nothing is informal, especially when it concerns my mental health." Right then, the doorbell rang. It was Attorney Whitaker, arriving exactly as planned. "Good afternoon," he said as he stepped inside. "I'm Mrs. Ruth Parker's attorney. What's going on here?" Dr. Franklin paled. I was just... "Do you have a legal license to evaluate my client?" Whitaker interrupted. "Do you have a court order authorizing this visit?" "No," the man stammered. "Then I suggest you leave immediately." Then he turned to Andrea. "And you, miss, please leave your mother's house." "This is my house," Andrea shouted. "And your mother is asking you to leave," Whitaker replied calmly. After they were gone, I sat down with Whitaker in the living room. "How did you know they'd show up today?" I asked. "Robert's been monitoring her," he said. "We knew she'd hired this so-called doctor to collect false evidence against you. He's not even a psychiatrist, just a marriage counselor without the authority to diagnose anyone." That night, I sat alone, hollow inside. The daughter I had loved and raised had become a stranger, one willing to destroy her own mother for money. But I also realized something else. I was stronger than I thought. All this time, I had seen myself as a victim. But now I knew I had wisdom, experience, loyal friends like Alma, and professionals like Whitaker and Robert on my side. The next morning, I did something Andrea would never expect. I called for a family meeting at my lawyer's office. "Why are we meeting there?" she asked over the phone. "To talk about our family's future," I said. "It's time for some honesty. If you want to talk, we can do it at your house." "No, Andrea," I said firmly. "We'll meet somewhere neutral with witnesses." That Wednesday afternoon, she arrived at the office with her attorney. I was there with Whitaker, Robert, and Alma. I began calmly. "Andrea, over the past several weeks, you've lied, manipulated, and threatened me. You tried to steal my house, spread rumors that I was losing my mind, and even used your own children to pressure me." "Mom, Don't interrupt me," I said, my voice steady but firm. "Robert has recorded everything: your meetings with lawyers to file for guardianship, your conversations with real estate agents, even the fake doctor you hired to declare me incompetent." Her face went pale. "Now here are my conditions," I continued. "First, you will stop telling people I have psychological issues. Second, you will not involve your children in your financial mess again. Third, you are not to come to my house without an invitation." "And if I don't agree?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Then this entire investigation file will go straight to the district attorney's office. In case you don't know, financial abuse of the elderly is a federal crime. You wouldn't do that. I'm your daughter." "Yes, you are my daughter," I said, "and that's the only reason I'm giving you a chance to make things right. But if you choose to keep going down this path, I'll protect myself as I always have." The room fell silent. I could see her wavering between pride and fear. "Fine," she whispered, "but you should know this will destroy whatever relationship we had." I stood up. "That relationship died the day you put money above family." That night, I slept better than I had in months. I knew I had won this battle, though I also understood the war wasn't over yet. For the next 3 weeks, Andrea kept her word. No calls, no visits, and according to Robert, no new contact with lawyers. I started to believe maybe she had finally realized what she'd done, that perhaps our relationship could be rebuilt on honesty. But I was wrong. One Tuesday morning, while I was drinking coffee and checking my messages, the phone rang. It was Michael's school principal. "Mrs. Parker, we need to speak with you urgently." "What's wrong?" "Is Michael all right?" "He's fine, but we're concerned. Yesterday, he told his teacher that his grandmother doesn't love the family anymore, and that's why his mother can't afford his school supplies." It felt like a knife went straight through my chest. Andrea was using her son again, this time to gain sympathy and pressure me through the school. I asked if I could come in that afternoon to talk. "Of course, Mrs. Parker," the principal said. "We're very worried about his emotional well-being." That afternoon, I sat in the principal's office for a long time, explaining everything: the manipulation, the lies, and how Andrea had dragged her children into her own schemes. The principal listened, compassion in her eyes. "Mrs. Parker, this is a delicate situation. We can't intervene in family matters, but we can help ensure Michael's emotional stability." "What do you suggest I do?" I asked. "The best thing you can do is talk to him directly. Explain, in a way he can understand. Children need to feel safe, and those lies are confusing him. When I left the school, I knew exactly what I had to do, something Andrea would never forgive." I drove straight to her apartment, where she lived with the kids. When I rang the doorbell, Sophia opened it. "Grandma!" she squealed, running into my arms. "Mom said we're not allowed to see you anymore." "Where's your mom?" I asked. "She went out with Uncle Richard and said she'll be back tonight." Richard, a name I'd never heard before. Michael heard my voice and came running, tears in his eyes. "Grandma, is it true you don't love us anymore?" I sat down on the couch and pulled them close. "Listen to me," I said softly. "I love you both more than anything in the world. That will never change. Your mom and I just have some grown-up problems to work out, but none of that has anything to do with you." "But why did Mom say you're a bad person?" Sophia asked. "Sometimes," I said gently, "adults say things they don't mean when they're angry or scared. Your mom isn't being truthful about a few things, and that makes me very sad." "Will you still come visit us, Grandma?" Michael asked. "I'll always want to see you. We just have to find a way that doesn't upset your mom, okay?" I stayed for 2 hours, helping them with homework, listening to their worries, and assuring them none of this was their fault. Before leaving, I quietly slipped an envelope into Sophia's backpack with a little money for school supplies and a handwritten note. "To my beloved grandchildren, with all my love, Grandma Ruth Parker." I knew it would make Andrea furious, but I didn't care. My grandchildren needed to know their grandmothers still loved them. That night, the phone rang. "How dare you go to my house without permission?" Andrea screamed. "They're my grandchildren," I said calmly. "I have a right to see them." "You have no rights. They're my kids. And they're suffering because you're using them as pawns in your games. If you come near my children again, I'll file a restraining order," she shouted. "Go ahead, Andrea," I replied evenly. "But remember, if we go to court, I'll be there too, with every piece of evidence of what you've done." "Are you threatening me?" "No," I said. "I'm telling you the truth. If you want to make this public, I'm ready. But think carefully, do you really want a judge to see how you've treated your own mother?" After hanging up, I called Alma. "Ruth, are you sure you want to take it this far?" she asked. "Alma, those kids are hurting. Sophia asked me if I still loved them. What kind of mother does that to her children?" "You're right," Alma said, "but be careful. People who are desperate, like Andrea, can do unpredictable things." She was right. The next morning, Andrea showed up at my door with his brother Carlos. "Mom," Carlos began the moment he stepped inside, "Andrea told me a lot of things that worry me. She said you've been acting strange, hiring private investigators, threatening to sue her." "That's what she told you?" I asked. "She said people are manipulating you to turn against your family." I looked past him to where Andrea stood, pretending to look concerned. "Carlos, sit down," I said. "You need to hear the whole story." For an hour, I told him everything: the fake scams, the plan to take my house, the threats, and the way she had used the kids to manipulate me. Carlos listened silently, and I watched his face shift from worry to disbelief to anger. "Andrea," he finally said, "is what Mom just told me true?" "She's exaggerating," Andrea snapped. "I was just trying to protect her." "Protect her by hiring a fake doctor? By forcing her to sign over her house?" "She would have lost everything if I hadn't." "She didn't lose anything," Carlos shot back. "You were trying to take what's hers." For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. Carlos understood. "Andrea," I said, "I can't believe you've gone this far." "So now you're against me too?" Andrea shouted at her brother. "I'm not against you," Carlos said, firmly. "I'm standing on the side of what's right, and what you've done is wrong." "Fine!" she screamed. "Everyone's against Andrea. Perfect mother, perfect son, ganging up on the terrible daughter." "No one's against you," I said softly. "We're against your actions. It's not too late to change." "Change what? This miserable life of debt? Being a single mom with nothing?" "We can find a way to fix it," I said, "but not through lies and manipulation." "It's too late," she muttered, storming out and slamming the door. That night, Carlos stayed at my house. We talked for hours. "Mom," he said before bed, "I'm canceling my flight. I'm staying until this is over." "There's no need, son." "Yes, there is." I didn't like the way she said she's made up her mind. It sounded dangerous. And he was right. Andrea's decision was worse than we imagined. On Friday morning, while Carlos and I were having breakfast, there was a knock on the door. A court officer handed me an envelope. "Mrs. Ruth Parker, you are being summoned to family court. Your daughter, Andrea Parker, has filed for a mental competency evaluation and is requesting temporary guardianship of your assets." Carlos took the papers, his voice shaking as he read. "She's claiming you have severe memory loss and are making reckless financial decisions that endanger you." I felt the world collapse around me. My own daughter had dragged me to court, ready to destroy my reputation and dignity just to take my money. Carlos kept reading. "She says the evidence of your mental decline includes hiring a private investigator, altering legal documents, and acting paranoid and aggressive." I whispered. "She's using everything I did to protect myself as proof that I'm insane." "Mom, calm down," Carlos said. "We have everything we need. Your medical records prove you're perfectly fine." I called Attorney Whitaker. "Immediately." "Mrs. Parker," he said, "we expected this. Robert and I have prepared everything. We have a very strong case." "But what if the judge believes her?" "He won't. We have Robert's recordings, your daughter admitting she lied about your condition. We have your medical reports and proof of her financial manipulation." The hearing was set for the following Tuesday. That weekend, Whitaker, Robert, and I went over every file, every document, every recording that showed Andrea was the abuser, not me. Whitaker said, "We'll make it clear to the court that Andrea is the one with issues, and this is just a desperate attempt to gain control over your estate." The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. The thought of standing before a judge, being evaluated like a child, having my private life laid bare, it terrified me. Carlos stayed by my side. "Mom," he said, "I'll be with you tomorrow. And when this is over, Andrea will realize she's made the biggest mistake of her life." The next morning, we arrived at court. The room was cold and filled with weary people and lawyers carrying briefcases. Andrea stood there with her attorney, looking different, cold, hard, as if she had crossed a line she could never return from. "Hello, Mom," she said as I walked past. "Hello, Andrea," I replied. "I hope you understand I'm doing this for your own good," she said softly. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The hearing began with her lawyer, an older man with a deep voice who spoke as though I weren't even in the room. "Your Honor, Mrs. Parker exhibits clear signs of cognitive decline. She has made irrational financial decisions, become paranoid toward her own family, hired investigators to spy on relatives, altered legal documents erratically, and even threatened her daughter with baseless legal action. She has isolated her grandchildren, causing them emotional distress. My client, her devoted daughter, is simply trying to protect her mother before things spiral out of control." Each word felt like a knife to the heart. The truth had been twisted until I looked like a confused, pitiful, and dangerous old woman. Then it was Attorney Whitaker's turn. "Your Honor," he said clearly, "we intend to prove that Mrs. Ruth Parker is entirely sound of mind, a capable woman who acted wisely to protect herself from a calculated act of financial abuse, one orchestrated by her own daughter." Whitaker began with my medical records. 3 separate doctors had certified that my cognitive abilities were completely normal for my age. Then he played the recordings Robert had gathered, Andrea admitting she had made up the story about con artists, lied about the bank's advice, and planned to use my house as collateral for a loan. Your Honor, Whitaker continued, Miss Andrea Parker contacted 3 different attorneys to inquire about obtaining guardianship over her mother. She consulted with appraisers and real estate agents about selling her mother's home. She even hired a so-called doctor without any license or court order to conduct a psychological evaluation. The paranoia she described simply does not exist. Mrs. Parker merely discovered her daughter's scheme and took lawful steps to protect herself. When it was my turn to speak, my legs trembled. Your Honor, I began, for 71 years, I've been a woman who always said yes. Yes to my husband, yes to my children, yes to anyone who needed me. But when my daughter decided that my house and money mattered more than my well-being, I learned to say no. I am not insane. I am simply tired. Tired of being seen as an obstacle between my daughter and her inheritance. Tired of being treated as if I were already dead. What I did was not paranoia. It was survival. The judge asked me a few questions. The date, the name of the president, some simple math problems. I answered each one correctly. Then came Andrea's turn to testify. Whitaker questioned her relentlessly. Miss Parker, is it true that you told your mother a bank employee advised her to transfer her property to a family member? Yes, but... And is it true that no such advice was ever given? No, not exactly. So you lied to your mother? I was only trying to protect her. Is it also true that you applied for a loan using your mother's house as collateral before she signed any papers? Andrea paused for several seconds. I was exploring my options. Without your mother's consent? I was going to tell her later. Please answer yes or no. Yes. When the questioning ended, Andrea burst into tears, but this time I felt no pity. She had chosen this path. The judge left to deliberate and returned shortly after, his voice steady and clear. This court finds that Mrs. Ruth Parker is fully competent and of sound mind. She has demonstrated exceptional judgment and awareness in protecting herself from what was clearly an attempt at financial abuse. The petition for guardianship is denied. Furthermore, Miss Andrea Parker is ordered not to contact her mother for the next 6 months, except in case of medical emergency. He looked directly at me. Mrs. Parker, I'm truly sorry you had to endure this. No mother should ever have to defend herself in court against her own child. When I stepped outside, Andrea was waiting on the courthouse steps. Mom, she called, tears streaming down her face. Please forgive me. I didn't know what else to do. I stopped and looked straight at her. You had plenty of chances to do the right thing. You just chose the worst one. What happens now? She asked. Now, I said quietly, you live with the consequences of your choices, and I live my life in peace. That was the last time I spoke to my daughter for a long while. The days after the hearing felt strange. For the first time in months, my phone didn't ring with Andrea's desperate calls. No more pleading messages, no surprise visits. The silence was both a relief and a painful reminder of what I'd lost a daughter, at least in spirit. Carlos stayed with me another week before flying back to Boston. Are you sure you'll be all right, Mom? He asked the night before his flight. I'm not alone, son. I have people who truly love me, you, Alma, and Whitaker. That's different from being surrounded by people who only want something from me. And the kids, he asked softly. That question pierced my heart. Sophia and Michael were paying the price for their mother's mistakes. I'll find a way to still be their grandmother, I said, but not the desperate kind who clings just to be included. 2 weeks later, the phone rang. It was Sophia. Grandma, I'm at my friend Maria's house. Can you come get me? What's wrong, sweetheart? Mom's really upset. She's been crying and yelling ever since she got home from court. She said you hate her, and that's why we can't see you anymore." I asked for the address and drove there immediately. When I arrived, Sophia ran into my arms. "Grandma, is it true we can't see you anymore? The judge just said your mom and I can't talk for a while, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. Can Michael and I live with you, Grandma?" That question broke me. "You have to stay with your mom. She loves you, she's just confused right now." I took Sophia home. Andrea opened the door, her eyes swollen and red. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Sophia called me. She was scared. "She's scared because you destroyed our family." "No, Andrea," I said quietly. "She's scared because her mother is acting like a child who can't handle not getting what she wants." We said nothing more. I handed Sophia over and left. In the weeks that followed, I began a new rhythm of life. I returned to yoga, enrolled in a computer class for seniors, joined a book club at the library. Slowly, I rediscovered the woman I had been before I let other people's chaos consume me. Alma and I grew closer than ever. We had lunch twice a week, went to the movies, took walks in the park. One afternoon she looked at me and said, "Ruth, you look different, younger." She was right. I felt lighter, as if I had shed a weight I'd been carrying for years. A month later, Whitaker called with news. "Mrs. Parker, Andrea sold her apartment and moved with the kids into a smaller place. It seems she's finally facing her financial reality." "And the kids?" I asked. "From what I hear, they're doing fine. The whole family is in therapy. Maybe Andrea is finally starting to understand the damage she caused." 2 months after the hearing, while I was buying vegetables at the farmer's market, I heard a familiar voice. "Grandma!" I turned around. It was Michael, running toward me, smiling wide. "My sweet boy," I said, hugging him tightly as tears filled my eyes. "I've missed you so much." "Grandma," Mom said, "we're not supposed to see you anymore, but I wanted to." His voice trembled, and it broke my heart. The woman standing next to him smiled kindly and came closer. "Mrs. Parker, I'm Carmen, Diego's mom. Michael talks about you all the time. He's a wonderful boy. I don't know what happened in your family, but he always says you're the smartest person he's ever known." Those words filled my heart with warmth, something I hadn't felt in months. When the 6-month contact order finally ended, I didn't know whether Andrea would reach out. The answer came in the form of a letter delivered by mail. "Mom," it began, "I know I don't have the right to ask for forgiveness after everything I've done. I know I tried to take your house, that I lied, manipulated, and dragged my kids into something they should have never been part of. I've been in therapy these past 6 months. My therapist helped me see that what I did wasn't just about money. I was jealous of your independence, your strength, your ability to live alone and still be happy, while I felt like a failure. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I found a better job. I'm paying off my debts little by little, and the kids are doing well. Sophia asks about you every day. If someday you can find it in your heart to trust me again, I'll be here. If not, I understand." I placed the letter on my nightstand and didn't answer right away. I needed time to sort through my feelings. 3 weeks later, I did something that even surprised me. I went to Michael's school at dismissal time. When he saw me, he ran toward me shouting, "Grandma!" so loudly everyone in the yard turned to look. "Want me to take you home?" I asked. "Yes, but I need to call Mom first." Michael used my phone to call her. "Mom, Grandma's here. Can I go to her house?" I could hear Andrea's muffled voice on the other end, though I couldn't make out the words. She said it's okay, Michael said. That afternoon we went to my house. We baked cookies, played cards, and talked about school. Neither of us mentioned what had happened between his mother and me. When I took him home, Andrea stepped out to meet us. "Thank you," she said softly. "He's my grandson," I replied. "Mom, can we talk sometime?" she asked. "Someday," I said, "when we're both ready." Now, 6 months later, I see my grandchildren once a week. Andrea and I greet each other politely when we meet, but we still haven't had that deep conversation we both know we need. Maybe one day we will. Maybe we won't. I've learned that I can't control other people's choices, not even my daughter's. The only life I can control is my own. And for the first time in years, I'm living it for me. This morning, I woke up early, enjoyed a quiet breakfast, read the news on my tablet, and snapped a selfie to send to my yoga group. The photo showed a 71-year-old woman with a genuine smile, not the forced kind worn to please others. Alma replied almost instantly, "Ruth, you look radiant." She was right. I do look radiant because after all these years, I've finally learned to choose who deserves my love, and that person is me. Maybe no one is ever truly prepared for the day they have to stand up to someone they love most. I used to believe that a mother's love could heal any wound until I realized that love without respect only deepens the pain. But I also learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing the weight in your heart so you can finally live free. Looking back now, I no longer see myself as a victim of what Andrea did, but as a woman who learned how to set boundaries and choose peace over suffering. Family isn't always perfect, but if we can hold on to even a little kindness, there's always hope for tomorrow. And what about you? Do you believe that a broken relationship can be mended through sincerity? Share your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing your stories and perspectives, and if you'd like to keep joining me on these journeys of love, loss, and renewal, stay with this channel. Together, we'll keep learning how to heal one story at a time.